Well, what a fun day this has been, right? If you had $1 for every time you had to refresh Twitter today, as long as it was working, we would probably all be doing okay. First day of the legal tampering period, let's be honest, first day of NFL free agency. And the Seahawks made one huge move today, securing their QB1. I'll tell you what I think of the Sam Darnold signing. And it was what didn't happen today that has most fans feeling a little sweaty, feeling a little anxious, questioning their existence, questioning their fanhood. What do I think is going to happen next? What am I hearing blowing in the wind? We'll break it all down, give you my thoughts, and a very special guest that I know you're going to know and like is going to join me at some point during the show as well. Let's get into it. This is the recap of the first day of free agency for your Seattle Seahawks. This is Seahawks Forever.
Welcome to the Seahawks Forever podcast. In-depth analysis on everything Seahawks. And now, here's your host, Dan Viens.
Let's get some business out of the way to begin with. This episode brought to you by the fine folks at Doer, built for doing lifestyle apparel for every occasion. Joggers, hoodies, premium t-shirts, Henleys, moleskin shirts. Big fan of those. But these right here are my daily go-to, these stretch performance jeans. It's kind of their trademark at Doer, 20% stretch. Some of the other leading brands have 5 to 10%, but not Doer. And if that sounds like a high number, I can assure you these things are light, they're comfortable, they move with you, but they are also very, very tough. You can tell from the moment you pull them out of the package, they are built tough. They are built for doing. And right now at shopdoer.com, you can get 20% off your first order for being a viewer of this program at shopdoer.com/forever. They have flagship stores in Denver, but you can get everything you need right here on the website. That's shopdoer, DUER.com/forever for 20% off your first order. All right, you guys. So first day of free agency, not quite in the books. Things could still happen. There's still signings. Byron Murphy just got a bag, 3 years, $66 million from the Minnesota Vikings. Not the Seahawks Byron Murphy, but former UW cornerback, nickel quarterback extraordinaire, Byron Murphy in Minnesota. And the Vikings are a team that we're keeping an eye on for a couple of reasons. We'll let you know that. Clinton Bonner from the Seahawkers podcast should be joining me in just a little bit. Anxious to get his thoughts and feedback on what happened today. And let's just start with this. Let's get right into the Sam Darnold thing. And then I want to get to some of your comments and questions early, because sometimes when I wait till the end of the show, there's 500 of them and it's kind of hard to take them as they come. And I really want to acknowledge and reward you guys for being here and watching and engaging and being a part of the conversation. So Sam Darnold, this was the expected move. Ever since the trade of Geno Smith, these were the dots that were connected. Sounded, in the last couple of days, like maybe Pittsburgh came into the picture. But then early this morning, reports that it looked like the trending storyline there was that Aaron Rodgers was going to end up being the choice in Pittsburgh. Because oddly enough, as we sit here today, the Pittsburgh Steelers have 0 quarterbacks on their roster. despite the fact that DK Metcalf was just traded there and signed to a $150 million deal and had said when he made his trade request that he wanted to go somewhere with a stable quarterback situation. So we'll see what else they do. I would imagine if they sign Aaron Rodgers there, they will be one of the teams looking heavily at maybe the tier 2 of this quarterback class in the draft coming up. Can't rely on Aaron Rodgers long-term, certainly. But as soon as that was the indication, then it just seemed like a matter of time before Sam Darnold was inked by Seattle or agreed to a contract. They can't sign anything until Wednesday, of course, when the new league year officially starts. And then it was just a question of money. Well, the deal ends up being 3 years, $100.5 million. Average annual value on its face of just over $33 million. But when you break it down, you look at the details, it really looks like a 2-year, $55 million deal. So roughly $27.5 million average annual value over the first 2 years. And then if he's not playing well, or you develop another guy behind him and he's ready to go, you're ready to roll with the younger guy, you can get out of that deal. Very, very reminiscent, kind of a hybrid of the deal that Geno Smith signed 2 years ago and the deal that Baker Mayfield signed 2 years ago. His was 3 years and $100 million. His guaranteed money was lower, though, about $35 million, where Sam Darnold's is $55. Let's bring my buddy Clinton Bonner in from the Seahawkers podcast. First of all, I got to ask, how are your eyes doing? Because mine just want to fall out of my head. Just stared at a computer screen all day, refreshing Twitter a million times, whether it was working or not. I would submit this is the most stressful day of the NFL year, of all 365 days, for reporters and content creators, because it's just relentless all day. Even the first day of the draft, it doesn't start till 5 and it's over in 3 hours. Today is a unicorn. It's unique.
Well, Dan, thanks for having me first and foremost, and hello to the whole audience out there, and good day. I mean, I guess it's like almost, you always hear about stockbrokers, right? Like New York Stock Exchange, or Chicago Mercantile, and oh yeah, that guy died at 42. Like, oh yeah, that guy had a heart attack at 37.
Now this every day.
Yeah, every day with maybe billions or trillions of dollars floating on by. But that intensity and the rapidity and yes, the Russell Wilson spike, when that all happened with the Broncos, that was the biggest single spike because he is who he is, right? And the deal was such a blockbuster. But there's been nothing like this 4-day stretch, nothing, starting with Tyler and then DK, and then everybody knows the rest of it from there. Yeah. But the amount of emotions and hills and oh my God, it's all burning down to oh, we're actually pretty darn stable and we got money and new draft picks and 5 in the top 92. The swing has been wild. And all I could say to John Schneider right now is okay, dude, I will tip my cap and I will shut up now, because I've been critical about maneuvers, and through this chaos, I got to say 4 days later, I feel pretty good. I don't know about you. How about you, Dan?
I do, but man, I can feel it. I'm glad you touched on it. You mentioned emotion, and you can really feel it in the fan base. It's tough to move on from popular players, and to have so many of these big impactful moves just thrown at us one after another, like body blows, no matter how you might try to prepare yourself leading up to it. Because look, moving on from Geno Smith and trading DK Metcalf have been hot topics in Seattle for 2 years.
Yeah.
So it shouldn't really come as a shock, but yet the reality of it is. And I think over time, we see this a lot when big moves are made. The initial reaction is based in emotion, and maybe it's not a very positive one, because you fall in love with the players. You fall in love with the name on the back of the jersey, and you've spent money on jerseys. You have a closet, right? They're not cheap. But over time, people read analysis and they get other expert opinions, and they soften and maybe they come around. But when it's one after another like this, I just don't think the fan base has had time to take a breath and take it all in yet. So I like what they've done, obviously, and we'll talk about this in a minute, but I want to just kind of do the quarterback thing first and then get some questions and comments before they stack up too deep.
Sure.
Certainly, and I'm sure the whole fan base feels this way. If they had locked up a guard or a center at this point, a good guard or a center that we can all feel good about, I think everybody would go to sleep feeling pretty good today, and then just kind of letting the rest of the week come to them. The fact that nothing has been done there has a lot of the fan base thinking, oh no, here we go again. We've seen this movie before, right?
Yes, hard to deny that feeling, and the sequence we're talking about too. Just to say like how impactful the velocity has been. I think on the average person is like,
Yeah.
I still haven't really thought about DK Metcalf. Like that part of the trade, that trade within the sequence was like, okay, that one makes the most sense because we were just not going to pay him $30 million and you get a second.
Yeah.
And he's been here 6 years and was really, really good. And he was the face of the team and he was so intense and you loved him. He might have been like, an a-hole, but he was ours. Right.
Mhm.
And he would go to battle for you. But that's how intense this all was, because with Geno, I was like white hot, like, oh my God, what are you doing? This guy spins the ball really well. If you just support him, like we're a yard away in overtime from beating the Rams, a yard on 3rd and 1 and 4th and 1, and we
Right.
lose that game. And if we win that game, they're buried. We win 11 games and we're the NFC West champs. And I
Yeah.
realized, a lot of butterfly effect stuff there, but I was white hot about this is the wrong move. DK happens. I'm like, okay, sensible. Sam happens. And then it kind of all comes together and be like, you know what? Operating this chessboard, I know that I could not have done this job under that kind of fire. Hence, I'm not a GM, but that's how big this was, Dan, that like the DK Metcalf stuff is already washed away basically 36 hours later. That's nuts.
I don't think people understand how much pressure these GMs are under, right? Because it's not just that their jobs are on the line and their success is on the line. They have pride. They want to win championships, but they know they have millions of fans in their fan base watching their every move and judging their every move. And it's easy for us. We can go on over the cap and we can play around and we can build the roster the way we want to. And it looks easy, but there's no consequence, right? I mean, it matters to these guys. And I think that gets lost sometimes when people are so quick to turn and really make it personal and get insulting. I've had so many people today tell me they're done being a fan because they don't like the Darnold move, right? But to that I would say, and I get it. Part of the frustration with Geno is, I think as a fan base, we've been clinging to this idea for the last 3 years that, man, if we could just build the support system around him,
right,
to support what he does well, we could get an MVP year out of this guy and really unlock him. And we've said that for 3 straight years. And now it's like, I don't know, it's kind of like that relationship that ends. And it's like, well, now I'm worried she's going to go become a lawyer and be rich and go on to great success.
She might,
leave
yeah.
and leave me in the dust. Like we might see someone else, untap that. So I get the emotion, but I will say this, and I really, really can't wait to hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah.
I think you have to look at that move in a vacuum, right? The reality was this: the Seahawks did want Geno Smith back, and I believe they entered this offseason, and everything they said to us, they meant 100%. They expected him to be their quarterback this year. I think they didn't think there'd be a market out there for him. They looked into that last year. B, I think they expected, as we all did, that the offer that they made him, which on an average annual value was pretty substantial, $40 to $45 million a year, that he would take it and be happy with it and they would roll on. The fact that he balked at the 2-year aspect of it and just shut everything down caught them by surprise. That being said, once they realized they had to move on, there was no better option on the planet that was attainable than Sam Darnold, and they got him.
So this was my exact point back on the Seahawkers pod when the news was breaking. Even yesterday, I'm looking at things. I said, guys, for me, this is the Doctor Strange when he holds up the one and says you got one path at this, right? Any other QB in free agency, there's 2 options. Any other QB besides Sam Darnold, to me, is the year is a wash. It's Rodgers at his best at this point. It's a wash. Kirk Cousins it's a wash. Then you get down to Daniel Jones, Cooper Rush. I mean, that desperation time, it's a wash. Then you're just tanking or, retooling, but you're really winning 4 or 5 games and you're seeing what's what with Arch Manning and others if he comes out. A dangerous lottery I don't want to play.
Yeah.
Or you get lucky again in the draft in like the 2nd or 3rd round or at pick 18 in a year where it's well known that there's not a lot of great looking quarterback talent, franchise talent. So the only option that got me up as a Seahawks fan today that I could process and be like, look, this team could still make a deep playoff push. And once you make that push, you can do anything. It's the NFL. Anything could happen. The only dude on the board was Sam Darnold.
Absolutely.
And he pulled it off. So you tip the cap. So for fans who are like, I'm done because of this move. I mean, okay, fine. I'm not going to tell you how to fan.
Right.
But I am going to tell you to grow up a little bit, just understand how things work, that these things are systems, that they are not, they all affect each other. And given the play that got put in front of them, they pulled something off that I think is really pretty damn good.
Yeah. I don't like to tell people how to fan, but sometimes it's really hard. And I had a hard time today. I told a lot of people.
I was watching on Twitter. I saw
Twitter, my YouTube page. Like I told a lot of people how to fan today. Right. But I've been up since 1:30 in the morning too. So, I'm running a little bit on fumes, and you can thank Rob Staten for that. But also the contract, right? I got a little bit worried early this morning. There was buzz that Pittsburgh was going to get in on the thing. And I thought maybe they were desperate enough. Like, they don't have a quarterback on the roster,
right.
that they could make this thing a little hot. But to get him on the deal they did, where again, essentially we're waiting on the details. We probably won't know those till after Wednesday, and we'll see what the first year cap hit is. Everybody seems to think it's going to be in the $15-ish million range, maybe tops.
That's what I'm seeing. But
it's going to be one of those deals similar to what Geno Smith's was, where if you draft a guy that you're ready to roll with, or Sam Darnold just doesn't play very well, you can move on from the deal after 2 years. And when we see the structure, we might even feel like there's an out after 1 year.
Yes.
I think there's very, very little risk for a guy that has a bunch of upside. You just have to support him. And, now we'll talk about that, right? But I want to get some questions and comments first, but we lose this subject matter.
Nice. Let's do it.
Get in on some of this before it piles up a little bit too much. Starting off with Owen Carter. Thank you for the $2 donation. Brokey here. Could you check my below comments? Okay. Let's see. Let's look for Owen. I like that. I like that approach. Like, just throw the blanket super chat out there, the super thanks, and then be like, hey, check out my stuff. Okay. Let's see if I can find something here. Oh, and okay. My mouse wasn't working. Well, I'll keep an eye out for it as we scroll down. How's that?
You can type it again too, right? Oh,
yeah, right.
Maybe get to the top of the queue, right?
Osiris Indiria or Indria. Sorry if I butchered that. My last name gets butchered all the time, so we are one and the same. Is the Darnold move a win now move or an investment in the future? Honestly, this may sound like a cop-out. I think it's both. I think it's an opportunity to keep your floor at, provided you take care of some of these other needs on offense, right? You keep your floor as a team that can win, and a team that can win enough to give themselves a chance. But I think we saw last year, at least the first 15 games, that there's some ceiling with Sam Darnold too that maybe hasn't even been achieved yet. Like what we saw Geno Smith do 3 years ago after sitting for 8 years was spectacular. But then we also saw him in some aspects of his game get better the last 2 years. I would expect Sam Darnold, the more he plays, especially being the guy and being in control of an offense, and I think a system that fits him really well, I think it's one of the reasons he's here, is I think there's still a little bit more in the tank there too. I think you can check both boxes on this, don't you?
I do. I think it's a bit of a, it's like a probabilistic quantum thing that it can be both, right? It does it, and there's probably one that's more likely than the other. But I think you're right, man. I think it could be both. And you got to remember too, like you said it earlier, the contract numbers. Look what the Falcons just did. The Falcons signed Cousins to a $50 million deal, then was like, we got a once in a lifetime chance, and took their guy. And the GM is sitting there with Arthur Blank and telling him draft day, hey, we're still taking a quarterback. And then after a year, figured it out, still cut bait. And guess what? They start 2025 with Michael Penix Jr. and a pretty good looking Falcons team. That's on the up and up. So if they can maneuver like that with a much bigger albatross around the neck financially, then that alone says to me, hey, it can be an investment in the future, even if it goes south. If it's okay, it's not a big deal. If he's good, hey, it can be win now, because what's McDonald going to do, right? this frees us up so much from making a bad decision in the draft at 18 or even 50, which is also huge because then maybe it's Kenneth Grant or maybe it's Tyler Warren if he's there, and Kubiak can go get a piece, or McDonald can just continue to build that front line wall that he knows he really wants to build on the D line and do like strength on strength. That would be investing in the now, right? So I'm with you, man. It can be both in some interesting ways.
And a strong indication of just how weak this free agent quarterback market was and how there were so few other choices. A lot of Seahawks fans wanted Justin Fields to be the guy, right?
I couldn't understand that, man.
They love the mobility. They look past the fact that he is just absolutely tapped out as a passer. I don't think there's any untapped potential there for him as a passer. He has some serious deficiencies in that area. You'd think the New York Jets would learn after all the issues they've had at the quarterback position, but to give Justin Fields $40 million, I cannot wrap my head around that. Thank God they did that and not us. That's all I'll say about that.
I'm very happy about that. Yeah, I'm with you.
Now, right off the bat, there was a body punch, though, right? Right off the 9-10. It was one of the first stories to break because everybody wanted Drew Dahlman. Mm-hmm. He was the perfect guy, 26, 27 years old, prime of his career, perfect zone blocking scheme center. Clint Kubiak says he needs an elite center to make it work. He's the guy. And the buzz was Chicago, and a lot of times the buzz is correct. Where there's smoke, there's fire. And he ends up signing a deal just minutes after the start of free agency. So right off the bat, the guy that, say if most Seahawks fans didn't even know who Drew Dahlman was 3 weeks ago.
Right.
And suddenly he was a guy that if you didn't get him, that John Schneider should be fired. Right off the bat, he's off the board. And so got a little bit nervous because I thought, here comes the run. Right? Everything John Schneider talks about with the dearth of talent at the position and the need that exists league-wide, I thought they're just going to fly off the board now. And man, we got to hustle. I just hope we get one of these guys. Mm-hmm. And they really didn't.
Yeah.
And as the day went on, then we got Darnold done. And the day kept carrying on. A couple guys came off the board. Aaron Banks got $77 million from Green Bay.
Too much money.
Thank goodness. Again, same as Justin Fields, that they did that deal. Like 49er fans were happy he walked.
Yes, saw that.
They didn't even want to keep him. So glad that someone else made that move. But there are some guys that everybody wanted. Tevin Jenkins from Chicago, still on the board, right? Guys like James Daniels, Will Fries, who Rob Staten on my show this morning said, probably the most ideal fit the Seahawks could pursue. Well, later in the day, we didn't hear anything about Fries, although I started to speculate as the day went on. I thought, wait a minute. He suffered a very severe broken leg last year, week 5, I think. And I dug up some articles on it. It was a significant injury, like very, very significant. There was some question as to what the timeline would be. And then as recently as February, I saw an interview with him where he was feeling good about the rehab, but there's still no timeline. Even when I remember Jordan Brooks coming back from his injury, right? We knew exactly what the timeline was, and he ended up playing pretty much exactly when they said he would. There's no timeline. We're not hearing that. Is he going to be ready for training camp? Usually the agent has something to say. When we signed Connor Williams last year, right? Drew Rosenhaus was like, he's going to be ready for training camp. Boom. Sure enough, he was. It dawned on me that, wait a minute, with an injury like that, no team is going to agree to a contract with him today because they're going to want their medical staff to look at him. And that can't happen until Wednesday. Probably the same with James Daniels too, although he ended up signing a deal today coming off the Achilles tear.
Yep.
And then little birdie spoke to me, right? And I'm sure that a lot of my viewers will remember who Whitney is. Now, she's not on Twitter anymore, but if you recall, Whitney made a big name for herself last year. I mean, she had a name before that because she liked to mix things up on Twitter a little bit, like to stir the pot. She was good at it. Not the game I like to play, but sometimes it was fun to sit back and watch. And she has a friend that is connected to the Seahawks front office. And she basically broke 2 stories last year that legitimately were out there because of her and her source before any other legitimate news media had the story. Mike McDonald, that his family was on the way to Seattle and they were going to close that deal. She had that information about 24 hours before everyone else. The Ryan Grubb thing, she had like 2 weeks in advance. I ran with it pretty hard. I took a bunch of blowback, mostly from Alabama fans. If you remember that time, like it dragged on forever. We didn't know what was going on. He showed up at Alabama and he spoke to their booster club on signing day and all of that. She was right. Her source is 2 for 2. Her guy, as she calls him, told her today, early this afternoon, that the Seahawks are working on closing a deal with Will Fries tonight. Now, the Vikings are reportedly in on this too, but there's no other strong buzz that you can scour Google or Twitter. It sounds like Will Fries may still be in play. If John Schneider is able to sign Will Fries, and he's already locked up Sam Darnold, before he does anything else this offseason, has he already won the offseason, do you think, in the eyes of fans, in the eyes of you?
Well, yeah, I'll speak for me first. And yes, because you mentioned 2 for 2 with Whitney there with the sourcing, John would have gone 2 for 2. I mean, Dahlman, the thing with Dahlman is like, yeah, we all wanted him. And he ended up taking almost like an Ernest Jones type deal. It's like, wow, we see Bolton. Yeah. And then
he reportedly had turned down more money.
Yes.
And obviously the speculation was that
he wanted to go to Ben Johnson's offense and go play in Chicago, which, hey, by the way, for the Bears to kind of turn that around by like, hey, they just went out and purchased three dudes and they made it happen. So you tip your cap.
They're going to be fun to watch.
They should be improved. Let's see what Caleb can do. Can Caleb process if the offensive line gives him some time? That will still be a big question mark, but they should be fun. But it looks like no matter what, Dahlman was off the board. Okay, so you can't say he's only 2 for 3 because he didn't get the center also. I just don't think that way. So if he gets Fries, yeah, I think he's 2 for 2. My only hesitation with Fries is that he took a little bit to get good in the NFL, a 7th round pick from Penn State.
Yeah.
But you also got to say, but he did get there. He got to be a successful anchor style guard. He's not gigantic, but he's technically really sound. He moves really, really well. But the last thing about that, Dan, is that like, all right, he moved really, really well. Right. Is he still going to move with that kind of whatever it is, giddy up or quickness in what's going to be a zone blocking scheme? Very important for those guys to be. And that's why we're excited about Christian Haynes, of course, right, in year 2. That's a big, I don't know. He's not a mauler. He's not a guy that's going to sit there. He's going to have to be on the move to be successful in Kubiak's offense. So there is still risk. But, man, would it be 2 for 2? Heck yeah.
I'm glad you brought up Christian Haynes because I think Will Fries is a great example of what I've been trying to tell fans for months, which is, so many of them want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Right. They want to flush the entire interior offensive line group off the roster and start fresh. Everyone's mock draft has 4 offensive linemen in it. Plus they want to sign 2 guys in free agency. That's not how it works. Offensive linemen take longer to develop, I think, than any other position group. You can make that argument. And I think Will Fries is a great example of that, right? It took him some time, but look what happened. Now he became a guy that is borderline, depending on scheme fit, elite. Now you have to wonder, is it just the injury or not? Like, why didn't Indianapolis work harder to bring him back? Now they had some money. They're sitting at about $40 million in cap space right now, but they spent some money today too. They went corner and a safety. I think they doled out some money, and maybe they just felt like they needed to shift allocation of resources a little bit and fix that defense. But it is interesting to me that they didn't make an attempt to bring Will Fries back. They also let Ryan Kelly walk, and I know that's a guy that some fans had their eye on. He goes to Minnesota for 2 years, $18 million at the age of 32. The 2-year contract would indicate that they think he's healthy. Yeah. I think he would have been fun. I wonder, as I look at this, and I continue to just kind of look at the roster and try to think this thing through, I wonder if guard is the priority because they actually like what they have at center. Like Oluwatimi doesn't seem to be an ideal athletic fit for the zone blocking scheme, but he's a guy that's very smart, very experienced, tons of snaps at a high level in college, really heady player. And Clint Kubiak puts a lot of responsibility on the center's plate. He takes it off the quarterback's plate. Center's responsible for all the protections. But also, man, I'm a big Jalen Sundell guy. And this is a guy that has an elite athletic profile. His RAS score is like 9.6. He was right there, almost inch for inch, pound for pound, 10th of a second for 10th of a second, like what Connor Williams was before the injury. And I just wonder if maybe they think if we fortify the guard positions, that maybe we have enough at center right now. And that's what I've been telling people. You sign one good free agent, then you let the board come to you in the draft and you take whoever's there.
Yeah, if Gray Zabel's your guy and you trade back from 18, you're like, all right, he could kick in and play center. Clearly can play guard, and he played tackle in college. And sure, you maybe, but I think again, I like to. You said it earlier, put things in vacuums. I think it's useful. I think it's just like a really good thought experiment, and help you think more clearly. So if Seattle has to make decisions, which they do, that's what the GMs have to do, and they say, okay, we need to prioritize. Are we going to try to upgrade guard or center right now? There's just no two ways about it. Guard is the much, much bigger need to get right now. There's two of them, right? That's just factual. And Laken Tomlinson was one last year.
Right.
And then, Laumea and Haynes maybe battle it out. And it doesn't mean you can't go bring in a vet, something a little bit more minimum for more camp battles and camp heat. If it's apparent that the two younger guys are not going to cut it. And you still have time for that kind of tinkering. But we don't have time for is to let the board pass us by right now to get one guard now so that we're free by April 24th when the draft hits, and the 25th, we got 4 picks that day, 4 picks on the 25th, day 2, for rounds 2 and 3, that we're in a better spot. We're in a spot of much more freedom. So, man, that's how I look at it too. Now, do I think we could do better than Olu? I do, but if Olu's our center, am I like throwing a hissy fit that he can't do the job? No. Give him, how about Olu with better guard play?
Yeah. I'll give you an example. I think a lot of fans look at Green Bay's center, Josh Myers, finished his rookie contract, 4th round pick out of Ohio State. He's a guy that I know I studied 4 years ago because we've been looking for center for, years and years and years. And I asked around about him today, people that are much more adept at X's and O's than I, and, is he a candidate? And I was told not a great fit for zone blocking, not a very good athlete. I'd rather roll with Olu than pay an outside free agent to come in. So that was the feedback I got on him. The Will Freeze thing, Dominic Scott says has to happen ASAP. I get that mentality. If it doesn't, if he signs somewhere else, there are other ways to skin a cat, right? There are other guys out there that can work, but we get attached to the idea of someone, and then we get disappointed if they go elsewhere. The Mekhi Becton thing, I put him in a bucket of guys that, again, I don't know that he's all that different than Anthony Bradford in that he's a mauler, not a zone guy. Like, I don't see Mekhi Becton getting out to the second level with nimble feet. And I saw him really struggle in pass protection. I think he's a guy that probably is going to make a little money this offseason because he got to play between Lane Johnson and Cam Jurgens. And that'll make a lot of dudes look good, especially if they're 330 pounds and, can pancake some dudes.
I mean, quickly on Becton for me too, like he's riding high, and good for him to get out of that with the Jets. Like, just the Jets they bungle so many things, and good for him to get out of there. Now, if it is Becton, I still wouldn't be like mad, 'cause I think it's a sincere upgrade. So I see enough in him that I don't think he's a terrible zone blocker. I just don't think a 6'8" guard that is that big is going to be the ideal body type. However, he's a 1st-round pedigree for a reason, because these guys they're amazing. So, like, from an upgrade perspective, if that is it, fine. But what do you got to pay for him to get like a 3 or 4 year contract? It's gonna be pretty high coming from Philly at this point. Versus, could you go get Zeitler and peel him out of Detroit for, he got 1 for 7 last year or something like that. Could you pay him 2 for 15 and say, with the second year kind of being erasable? I don't know. I mean, maybe. And yes, he's older, but it's still like, if it's to solve the problem and give you agency when it comes time to draft, Zeitler solves that problem also.
Yeah, and we know the Seahawks talked to Zeitler last offseason, made an attempt to try to sign him before he, I think it was pretty understandable at the time why he'd want to go to Detroit and fit into that line and chase a ring.
For sure.
And there are other guys too. There's names that we're not even familiar with that would probably do a nice job fitting in there. Shane says, thanks for the donation, Shane. Always good to see you. JS has done an amazing job to pull this together. It could easily have gone off the rails here. Not the Hawks have a QB, money, extra draft picks. Isn't it nice to have salary cap space? Now, I know the cynic would say, and I did this myself, I took screenshots of everything that went down in 2020, put it out there. I was trying to pull the reverse jinx. The last time we had like $64 million in cap space and a bunch of picks, and the 2020 offseason was an absolute disaster.
Yeah, squandered.
I was trying to reverse jinx that. But the cool thing about it is that I think I can make the argument. You got your quarterback in place. The cap hit's not going to be that big. You sign Will Freeze. It's one dude. You fill in some other spots. You grab a value wide receiver. I have a hard time finding how they're going to spend all of that money. And I don't think they want to. John always talks about always wanting to be flexible at the trade deadline, right? And holding some of that back. So it's pretty exciting. And part of the reason that the cap is in such good shape is moves like this. And someone told me today, they said, I don't trust John to go out there in free agency because he's a bad negotiator. Well, let me show you. Let me show you something here, because he was part. Let me get this out of here. Oh, hold on. Where's this? Hold on.
There you go. No worries. Shane's the man, by the way, for all those out in Australia. He's he's a musician, and he's if you're on the west coast of Australia, go see Shane. Yep. That dude rips.
He loves these night shows because he can actually watch them.
Love it.
This is Ernest Jones contracts. Aaron Wilson had the details just hit about an hour ago. Look at that first year cap hit. Like, first of all, the fact that we got him for 3 years, $33 million, and only $15 million guaranteed. I don't know if it's the knee or that was just an indication of him wanting to be here that bad and wanting to give the team flexibility. But a $5.2 million cap hit in the first year, and then 10-3 and 10-8 in years 2 and 3. This isn't a dummy contract. This isn't a contract that has void years tacked on. This is just straight up great value for a 26-year-old middle linebacker that transformed this defense. I think John Schneider and Joey Lane deserve some credit for this deal.
I can't say anything to add to that, and so I won't.
Let's see what else do we have here. So Sam Darnold, 27 years old, probably turns 28 this year. Again, we haven't seen the full structure of the contract, but we're assuming that it's probably a 2-year deal on its face. How aggressive would you like to see them be in drafting a quarterback this year to try and set up so that if Darnold could grab the reins and establish himself as a franchise quarterback, sign a second contract, it's all a moot point. But how aggressive would you like to see them be to kind of layer it and try and add a guy with some upside that also might be able to hit?
So I'm going to answer it in the way that I think it's, for most people, they'd say it's a fairly non-aggressive, right? If I'm trying to dial that in between like a 1 and a 10. So what does that mean? I start to get comfortable if it's like that pick 92 that we picked up, right? And it's like, okay, that kind of range. Or if they really love a guy and they want to go a little earlier than that, sure, you got a guy, you go ahead.
Right.
I think there's more dudes this time around that are like Spencer Rattler. And you can think what you want to think about him, right? After a rookie year, he did some good things. He processes pretty well, actually. There's some things to be desired there as well. But I think there's more dudes like that, more breadth of guys like that than there were last year. It was so top heavy. And then a few sprinkled in that, hey, take a flyer at that point. I don't want to see like a pick 18 go that way, because in my heart of hearts, what I said earlier is with Darnold, this team could still be ready this year to make a legit push. The NFC is not that great. Eagles are tough. Commanders are up and coming. Rams are still a problem. All right.
I agree with you. I've toyed with the idea. I even talked about it last night on the show that, even if you bring Darnold into the fold, and obviously it, depending on, let's see what the contract looks like, that I have a feeling that Jackson Dart's a guy that John Schneider is going to fall in love with. I just think every quality that he has, both on the field and off the field, is something that really gets John Schneider excited. And so I was open to the possibility that you take him at 18 and you stash him. He's young enough, he fits the timeline, and then off you go and you figure it out. One of those guys becomes your franchise quarterback at some point. I'm not so sure, because then I think you run into kind of a sort of an Atlanta light situation to what you described earlier. You sign Sam Darnold coming off his best year ever. I think did he get some MVP votes? Or he was certainly trending that way.
The talk was there going into like week 15. I'm not sure if
Right. I mean, certainly mid-season, he was a guy that was getting some MVP buzz. But you do that. And then between now and the draft, they're going to parade him out there. They're going to have the press conference. This is our guy. This is a guy you're going to hear John Schneider say, this is a guy that we studied. It's a guy that we liked. It's a guy that Pete liked in 2021. We know about the reports there. And then you go take Jackson Dart at 18 in the first round, and you kind of find yourself in that same position where it's like, okay, we have some trench needs. You could have taken a defensive tackle or an edge guy or an offensive lineman, depending on what they do between now and then. And now you're just kind of I think there would be too many questions, not to mention Sam Howell, who you went out and drafted or traded the equivalent of like a late third or early fourth for last year. I think it becomes a little awkward there. So that's why I'm with you. I think that third round range, you can dip into some semblance of that clump that it seems like we're at right now, where Will Howard, Quinn Ewers, Kyle McCord, maybe Jalen Milroe, and maybe I'll say this. I've been out on Milroe since I saw him at the Senior Bowl. I do think we saw some progress. It looked like he'd gone to the lab. I heard someone reference that, and so I'm stealing it. He looked better. He's been working on the mechanical stuff in the short and intermediate game, and the potential ceiling is immense, right? But you get him later on, maybe that timeline, maybe now with a guy like Darnold in tow, you can afford to take on more of a project. You can afford to take a Jalen Milroe on, tinker with him for a couple of years. If he develops, great. I mean, sky's the limit. If he doesn't, okay, maybe you talk about a position change or you just move on. I think it opens, having Sam Darnold in the fold just opens you up to any possibility, and you can let the board fall to you.
Yeah, I loved how you phrased it. And I think that the final point of giving yourself the freedom, the allowance of time is huge. So if you want to take the dude that needs a little bit more, because we watch him, it's like, okay, got a frozen rope for an arm, but not exactly putting touch on there. Everything's just like 100 miles an hour, but he could do it. They could learn that. And then for me, like Kyle McCord, I like, to me, he's like stronger armed Chad Pennington, where I'm like, ooh, I see a lot of touch there. I see a lot of feathering. It's like, oh, those are easy to catch balls. All right, man, you get him in the 4th or 5th round. If he's never nothing, who cares?
Right.
I want him to be good, but if he's never just a 4th or 5th rounder, it's a lottery ticket. There'll be more dudes. Will Howard is a winner, and he's got good touch too. So
fiery.
So there's dudes there, and any one of them in that area, if they like it, they like it. Now, if they love Dart and he's the 18th pick, I'll have my challenges with it. But Dan, I got to be like, all right, man, he sees something, and he's making a call for a reason. And maybe it's just like a year later, it's the Penix Cousins thing. Only this time, it's not trying to jettison a gigantic contract.
Right.
You still have a tradable asset in Darnold, so it's even less risk. So I can live with it.
People have tried to make the analogy to 2012, right? When they drafted Russ, they had signed Matt Flynn in free agency. They had Tavares Jackson on the roster. That Sam Howell would be Tavares Jackson, Sam Darnold would be Matt Flynn, and then whoever they draft would be Russell Wilson. My pushback on that is Sam Darnold is so much better than Matt Flynn ever was going to be or ever could be that I don't think it's apples to apples necessarily. So this is interesting as we look at kind of what else is there. And I've got Greg Rosenthal's top 100 free agents queued up with all of the updates and who's still remaining. Late today, about an hour before I went on the air, it was announced that the 49ers have informed Kyle Juszczyk that they're going to release him. 32 years old. So, question about how much does he have left in the tank? But sometimes guys at that position can hold up. I mean, Nick Bloor doesn't play a lot of fullback anymore, but he's 36, 37, right? He's still playing on special teams, throwing his body around. Kyle Juszczyk, I mean, are we talking about a Hall of Fame fullback here? Like, not a lot of teams use a fullback, but this guy was the gold standard for 10 years. And a guy that we had to see over and over and over again. Clint Kubiak's one of those guys that uses a fullback. There isn't one on the roster. He says there's going to be. And we've talked about guys like Adam Prentice, who was in New Orleans last year with him, or Patrick Richard, who certainly Mike McDonald knows from Baltimore. Those are both free agents. Now that Juszczyk is available. Now, Dominic Scott here says $6 million a year. I don't think a 32-year-old fullback is going to command $6 million a year when there's only 3 or 4 teams that use fullbacks. Do you? What would you think of the dreaded 49er nemesis switching sides?
That part doesn't bug me. Like, like when Sherm went over there, it's like, I just get it.
Payback.
I absolutely have the switch goes off. It's like, okay, the die is cast and they're athletes and they're trying to make money. So it's just, I don't have that kind of that wired in me. KJ's on the, KJ writes on the sideline, how dare he? I'm like, no, he's just trying to be a coach. I'm just not wired that way. So I don't care. Like if it helps your team, helps your team. However, I really like that currently I saw this today. I think it's accurate that the oldest dude on Seattle's offense right now is Noah Fant. He's 27 years old. I really like the youth movement. I know this is a specialty player and we would use that chip. I just think there's dudes in the draft and there's free agents and there's even some tight ends that are out there that are folks that are being drafted that also could double as really, what I think, really effective fullbacks, whether if they're in a 21 or something like that. So I would not want Juszczyk from the simple standpoint of, I think you'll pay a bit of a premium for past performance. And I just don't want the 32, 33-year-old when I think we can get younger, cheaper in a position of that's like a specialist.
Yeah. We have breaking news. I was hoping this would happen tonight.
What do we got?
And shout out to Detail Oriented. Thank you for the donation. People saying Josh Jones just signed. I might want to check. So here it is from Greg Bell. This came down about 10 minutes ago. Seahawks closing in on an agreement on a 1-year contract with 27-year-old offensive lineman Josh Jones. Played 2024 with Mike McDonald's former Ravens. 23 with Houston. First 3 NFL years with Arizona. I think he's out of the University of Houston, if I recall, right? Is that the guy I'm thinking of?
Look at it right now, yeah.
Drafted him in the 3rd round in 2020. 6'5", is it University of Houston? Was I right on that?
Yep, Houston, you got it.
6'5", 339, has played every offensive line spot in the NFL except center. Rap sheet, Ian Rappaport first on it. So I remember Jones coming out, remember studying him because, again, this is before they drafted Charles Cross. He was a very, very raw athlete that projected as potentially a left tackle. Never obviously got his footing there. But as a guy now that can jump around the line, I'm not expecting this to be a very expensive contract.
Right.
I thought one of the very underrated needs going into this offseason was getting a guy that could be a swing tackle, could play both sides for you. It's what they tried to get in George Fant last year, obviously with the concerns about Abe Lucas's knee, and Fant could never get healthy. Stone Forsythe has filled that role, sometimes admirably, and sometimes he would struggle, but he could play both sides in a pinch. I don't think Michael Jarrell can play the left side. And so I thought getting a guy like that is why I really wanted Patrick McCarry, but he ended up signing Jacksonville. So I think getting a guy like this, obviously we'll wait and see the money. I think this is underrated. He might never see the field, right? Might not be the kind of guy that a lot of fans will even get to know. But a very, very important role on this offense. So Seattle making moves on the offensive line, even though it's not an interior guy. We're still waiting on that.
Yeah. Hey, look, I love the thing about getting your swing tackle and why it matters. And if you go back and watch some Kubiak, it's a lot of 12, it's a lot of 13, but he's also doing the thing where he's got just straight up 6 linemen out there. He does that too, right? So the George Fant
develop.
Yeah, exactly.
Guys do develop. I think Dan Moore just signed a huge contract today, and he's only started like 10 games, but he's a guy that just kind of got better and better every year. Maybe this is a guy that, if they're not confident in Lucas's knee after next year, I'm not familiar with this guy's game. It's been 4 years since I've watched any tape on him, but 6'5", 339, that sure sounds like a right tackle to me. And maybe they kind of did that, sort of a hedge against maybe they don't want to sign Lucas to an extension because they're worried about that knee long term, and this is a guy that you can.
Well, hopefully that's not the case. Hopefully it's
right.
Hopefully it's more insurance, and that's it. But hey, look, it's an exciting time of year, man. So we're gonna get these are all little Christmas gifts popping under the tree. So we're gonna open every one, and we're gonna, even if it's not the big one, right? We're still gonna cherish everyone as we open them.
Anyone that fans see that we've signed that has a G, a T, or an OL next to them, even if they don't recognize the name, they're going to be like, all right.
Yeah.
Here we go. Rather be flying an X-Wing. Welcome back. Asked, and I touched on this earlier, but can Jalen Sundell handle center in this offense. So I'm a big Jalen Sundell stan. Like I remember going to the inter squad game, the mock game, whatever they called it, which this year was just a glorified practice.
Yep.
And I remember him coming in. He had just signed earlier that week, and I didn't even know it was him. I just know that he caught my eye, and I just liked the way he moved. I liked the way he hit. I liked his technique in pass protection. I thought, who's this guy? Oh, it's the kid from NDSU. I mean, this guy had a more decorated career at NDSU than Gray Zabel.
Yeah.
Like played more snaps, 4-year starter, All-American, played center and left tackle. Very similar trajectory to Gray Zabel. As I said, kind of elite-ish athletic profile. I think, and Mike McDonald brought him up unprompted when he was speaking at the combine behind the podium, like just brought him up and was almost giddy. Kind of his tone changed, talked about how he could play all 5 positions if he had to. I think they really like Jalen Sundell. And that's why I think we might not see a center signing, or if we do, maybe just like a Laken Tomlinson, Evan Brown-ish type center, 1 year kind of veteran stopgap just to compete. I think he's got a big ceiling. I do. I like Sundell. Big super thanks from Osiris Indria. I really want to get that right. If you can, maybe hit me with a phonetic because I want to, as someone who gets his name butchered all the time, I really want to be able to pronounce your name. But thank you so much for the donation. Really, really appreciate that. And then here's Shane again with the $2.99 super thanks. Ewers in the second and develop old school style. The thing I like about Ewers, there's a lot of things I like about his game. He's not a perfect prospect, obviously. None of these guys are, or they would go first overall, right? But Cam Ward's going to go first overall, and he's far from a perfect prospect in this class anyway. But I there's a lot of things about Ewers' game I like. But one thing I really like is his age and how he would fit the timeline. He doesn't turn 22 until I think Friday, like whatever the 14th is. So you draft a guy like Ewers at that age, and we've seen so many quarterbacks come out the last couple of years that are older because of the COVID years and all of that. Tyler Shuck's a great example of that this year. You can develop him behind Sam Darnold, and unless anything less than Sam Darnold just becoming like a top 10 quarterback and being worthy of a big second contract, and Ewers will be 23, 24 if he gets to a point where he's worth giving a shot to me, that fits.
Yeah. And I like the idea. For me, the biggest part of the entire equation is the fact that because of the move, because it's not a throwaway year now, whoever we take, you could do what the NFL did until about 15 years ago, which was draft a quarterback and let him learn.
Yeah.
Very, very, very few would make the leap. Even guards, man. We were talking about guards earlier. The rule of thumb back in the day, the wide receivers, it takes 3 seasons. It takes 3 seasons. It was just kind of the rule of thumb, and it was accepted. And now everything is so rushed, right? So whether it's Ewers or even the flip side of that, maybe it is Shuck because they're like, whatever, we don't care if he's basically Darnold's age. We're just going to take the best dude. That time horizon doesn't matter because we can get out of the deal we just talked about, right? So a lot of flexibility there. So, and any of those dudes, again, I prefer not the second round. I think there's enough volume, and we have the draft picks now that we could kick that a little bit further. But again, if they like a dude and they go for it, then I'll be all in.
I mean, that's the thing. I in most of my mock drafts the last month or so, I've been using that 3rd round pick on a quarterback.
Yeah.
And that was before we had an extra second and extra third. I mean, it just really gives you that luxury to be creative with the pick, take a risk, take a shot at a kid with some upside that's maybe a little more raw because you're not as dependent on having to have that pick hit. Vince Ochoa, thank you for the donation. Love the content, Dan. Keep up the great work. Get it. So when we talk about what's next, we got to talk about wide receiver too. Yeah. Right. I mean, there's not literally. I mean, technically, Jake Bobo's still on the roster. Derek Young is still on the roster. It's kind of hard to really keep up. I was trying to update my spreadsheet today, but the Seahawks haven't even updated their official roster. They still have guys that are no longer on the roster, and they haven't added new players, obviously. But how do you want to see them approach the wide receiver room now that there's some gaping needs there? Don't play as much 3 wide receiver sets under Clint Kubiak. but no Tyler Lockett and no DK Metcalf. So suddenly a wide receiver room that we thought was among the best in the league last year with the trio is down to one. How would you like to see them approach that?
Yeah, I'll start with what I don't want, because I think it will like take a lot of pieces off the board.
I think we're aligned here.
Yeah, what I don't want is spending what I would deem pretty big money on guys that are like traditionally wide receiver 3 or 4s that might be pushing getting wide receiver 2 type money. You know, we saw Slayton and Palmer go today for $12 million a piece. Meanwhile, Hollis gets a minuscule contract, and I'd rather have him. So there's that tertiary, that third tier of dudes. And, you know, you and I were DMing about this a little bit earlier today. So like if there's like, hey, what one guy do you want? I want at least one. So if I had my druthers, it'd be like Tim Patrick from the Lions, you know, for years with the Broncos, for those that might remember him. And he was like a 1 year, $4.5 million guy last year, something like that. He's just really effective. So what do I want? I want the consummate professional wide receiver. They don't need to be a specialist. I don't want a gadget guy right now. I want a dude that's like, if he needs to flex to 2, he could do it, but he's probably a really just solid 3. This is a pitching rotation. It's like, oh, cool. This guy could go out every 5th day and go eat innings. Cool. Get me that at $4 to $5 million and save some of that capital for the draft and maybe some trades later. I don't want splashy wide receivers because I don't think the talent is really there with this free agent crop.
I'm with you. You spend top money to get a receiver. You're getting an older guy, and that position doesn't age well. It's why after everything was all said and done, I was even more pleased with the DK trade and what we got in return for it, because there's no way I would want any part of paying him what Pittsburgh's paying him and giving him that contract when he's going to be 32, pushing 33, I think, if I'm correct, at the end of that deal. And that skill set just doesn't, we've seen it. It doesn't age well. And when those guys drop off, we saw it with Jones and DeAndre Hopkins, guys like that. Like when they drop off, they're like the old DH that loses bat speed, and it happens overnight.
Yeah, that's perfect metaphor. The one name I'm like the most allergic to that I've seen, I won't name names, but I've seen, pretty high level Seahawks correspondents and beat guys talking about, is like, they're like, oh, wouldn't Amari Cooper be a cool flyer? And I'm like, did you watch the last half a year in Buffalo, with a really good team that can push the ball down the field? And then big body, slower, looks like hands are regressing, but he has this gold star pedigree that you're going to pay him because of a name. That's the exact dude that I'm like, no, thank you. I think it would cripple other efforts.
You know, it's funny. I'm looking at Over the Cap right now, just checking their free agent tracker to just kind of peruse the wide receiver class again. And, these websites do a great job, but they're not always up to date.
Right.
I don't know. There's this 28-year-old wide receiver that's an unrestricted free agent on here named DK Metcalf. That's not the case. But Amari Cooper, 31 years old. Like, I just don't want to touch any over. Now, I am with you. I would like to, they got to sign someone in free agency. I'd like to sign a value signing, right? Like someone that you can just plug in. He's going to play a role. He's going to be a pro. Maybe there's 2 ways you can go here. I think a guy like Marquez Valdez-Scantling makes all the sense in the world, right? He signs with New Orleans late last year, scores 4 touchdowns in their last 4 games. Yeah. When they had some injury issues, Shaheed was out. I think Olave was banged up.
Yep. He was.
And, for Clint Kubiak, this guy's bounced around a little bit. There's been some drops issues and whatever, but he's kind of fills a similar role. He's 6'5", but he's got some deep speed and great red zone target. Like, that just makes too much sense. Played for the vet minimum last year. Not going to be expensive. Probably a 1-year deal. That almost seems like too obvious it's going to happen, right? But then I'm looking. Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I like for MVS specifically, and I can be quick about it. I still like that he has the take the top off speed. Mm-hmm. And that's not JSN's game. I think JSN could be more effective on the outside than other people think, but he's still not a burner, right? And MVS can get over the top. So I like that what it would give Kubiak from like what I've seen, what he tries to do, especially because he's very routinely only trotting 2 receivers out there. So it's a really nice piece to have that goes along with JSN, I think, nicely.
And then I'm looking for guys that have finished their rookie contracts. They've been a disappointment, haven't lived up to their draft status, probably looking for a prove-it deal, not going to be expensive. And in particular, I think of the 2 Moores, Rondale and Elijah, right? Rondale's a guy that was in the division. Arizona Cardinals, had some injury issues, could never get going. But man, I know when Cliff Kingsbury was down there, he kept telling us how he was going to use him in all these different ways, and jet sweeps and things like that. Very similar to what Rashid Shaheed was for Clint Kubiak in New Orleans last year, what the Seahawks wanted D. Eskridge to be.
Yes, exactly.
I don't know if maybe the injuries have taken its toll on him or not. And then Elijah Moore, who was a high draft pick, was in a terrible situation in New York, went to Cleveland, another terrible situation. He's never had a good quarterback stability situation, but yet he's made plays and he's a really dynamic athlete. Like guys like that make sense to me. Grab a guy that's a value that you think has some upside or that can play a specific role in your offense, and then go for upside in a wide receiver class that, while it might not be as dynamic and it might not be as full of like can't miss blue chip guys as the last 3 drafts have been, there's some really, really cool prospects in this draft, especially like the day 2 range. I really, really like some of the wide receivers. Pretty much whatever you want. There's some taller guys, there's outside guys, there's slot guys. I want to find someone complimentary. And you touched on something really cool. So JSN played 80% out of the slot last year, but DK Metcalf was a thing, right? He existed. I ask you to expand on that, of whether you think he can play outside because of this. Every Seahawk fan on the planet is keeping an eye on Cooper Kupp situation, right? And it came again today, later in the day, that if they can't trade him by the start of the league year, they're going to release him, which means, guess what? They're going to release him by Wednesday. No one's trading for that contract. His parents are from Tacoma. He played at Eastern Washington. He's a Washington kid. I don't know if he was a Seahawk fan, right? But you would think he's much money. He's on the other side of 30 now, but I see him as maybe having a couple of like Adam Thielen type years left in him, where we thought Thielen was done and he goes to Carolina and he's their number 1 receiver for 2 years. But can he coexist with JSN? Because Cooper Kupp at this point in his career, he's a slot guy.
Yeah. This is like the one dude I think I'm willing to break my age rule for with the trend we have. So I'll go against myself here. And the reason being is, you said it in there. It's like, yeah, he may have lost a little bit of speed and through injury, and he's got, hamstring, soft tissue things that do pop up more often than you'd like. And that's just the way it goes. With that, I go back to baseball a lot, right? You're going back to a dude who like knows how to paint
analogies.
A dude who knows how to paint the corners, a guy who knows how to pitch, right? And so from his perspective, he's a tactician. So if you have JSN and Cooper Kupp, I think you figure it out. I think there's enough room to figure it out, like literal room. And I think you end up with Kubiak in a situation that he's really satisfied with all the short stuff he wants to go do. He's got like 2 really powerful weapons that do that quite well. So that's a guy, like, I don't know how much we have to pay for him. There's going to be some premium because he is Cooper Kupp, but that's a dude I think I'd be willing to make make an exception for in this youth movement. Just think he's valuable.
I do think there's going to be a market for him. I was hoping it was the kind of deal, sort of what we saw with Russell Wilson and what we might see with Kirk Cousins coming up, that, there was offset language and there was so much guaranteed money coming to him that he could take a vet minimum somewhere. It's not the case. The guaranteed money is only $5 million. I think I checked in with Curtis Allen today and he confirmed that. So there's going to be a market for a guy like Cooper Kupp, that can do what he does in middle of the field. I do think he'd be a fit in Seattle potentially, because you don't necessarily have to look at him as a traditional wide receiver. His role in that LA offense where they run those tight bunch formations,
a lot.
He was a big slot. He was almost, you could make the argument that he almost filled the role of like a wide tight end. And Kubiak's going to run a bunch of 12 and 13 that you could almost kind of stick him into that role. So, I mean, if the motivation's there and he wants to take a deal that works, it'd be a lot of fun. I think it would certainly be a very popular move with the fan base. Maybe one of the most popular moves you could pull off this offseason would be to bring Cooper Kupp to Seattle.
I agree.
Owen Carter, thanks for the donation. Now, this you may have heard typing while you're talking there a minute ago. Owen's question is thoughts on Andrew Armstrong, super underrated. I don't know who he is. Do you?
Thank you. No, I'm typing also. So,
and I can't. Is the first name wrong? Like an Anthony Armstrong came up, but then there were.
I got a prospect from Arkansas wide receiver.
Okay,
so
So maybe it's there we go. It's a draft prospect. I was thinking it was a free agent. Yeah, I'm on NFL Draft Buzz, 6'4", 202 pounds, 4'5", and I don't know I don't remember him at the combine.
I don't
small
know
school
him, so,
transfer to Arkansas. Yeah, not familiar with him, so can't speak on it, but appreciate the question. But I'll tell you what, I'm going to go watch some tape on him sometime this week. I am going to look at wide receivers. I hadn't done all that closely other than what I saw at the Senior Bowl and at the combine until DK Metcalf was traded. So thank you for giving me some homework.
And Dan, I had one more to throw out there that I think is. Oh, am I behind? Oh yeah, one more guy that's at the end of his rookie contract that I think had a really cool end of his year was De'Ami Brown. I thought it was just an interesting. The last 5 or 6 weeks when all of a sudden McLaurin,
a lot of fans have brought up to me. Yeah.
Yeah, it just he had a really, and the Commanders were on TV. You know, Jaden Daniels gets hot. Commanders are a hot team. They're under the microscope, and everybody's starting to watch them. And all of a sudden, De'Ami Brown emerges the last 6 or so weeks and has a good playoff run, where he's obviously Terry's number one, but he looked like a really like a nice compliment, and now he's available. So just another young dude that I don't think he'll break the bank because it's not his rookie contract. He didn't do much until the very end of it. So just at least intriguing. So
just an update. This from Brady Henderson 3 minutes ago on Twitter. The Seahawks have agreed to a deal with former Ravens tackle guard Josh Jones. A source confirms to Jeremy Fowler. Jones, 27, has started 24 games over 5 seasons. He replaces George Fant as the swing tackle and can also play guard. No details on what the money would be. But again, I don't expect that to be a very rich deal. Gosh, that just sounds like a really, really valuable signing. Again, I was looking because someone asked if there was any update on Freeze. So I thought maybe there was something we're going to see. Although more confirmation that the Los Angeles Rams are preparing to release their star wide receiver, Cooper Kupp. Yeah, we may have to go to sleep tonight without an interior offensive lineman. But if this offseason hasn't taught you anything, buzz is not nothing. Smoke usually leads to fire. Often where there's smoke, there is fire. You know, my good buddy Corbin Smith took so much heat, and also his counterpart with Green Bay, Peter Bukowski, took so much heat last year for what they reported with the Green Bay Packers being interested in DK and making certain offers. And then there was a lot of blowback, and they took a lot of heat from fans and some other reporters. The Athletic did some pretty severe damage control trying to walk that thing back. Corbin told me off the record exactly who his source was, and it's a legitimate source. Like, his information was good. And oh, by the way, a week later, DK gets traded for a second-round draft pick. Buzz often means something. And the only buzz that we had as the day went along today was that maybe Will Fries was negotiating with the Seahawks, and there really wasn't a lot of other indications that he was working on anything with anyone else. So fingers crossed, man. I know I asked you this at the top, but I think Will Fries, if the Seahawks could lock up Will Fries, I think that could go farther in combination with getting Sam Darnold, could go farther to maybe not changing people's perceptions of John Schneider, but maybe stemming the tide and kind of calling off the dogs a little bit if he's able to get that done on the second day of free agency.
I think it does the trick, and I hate to frame it that way, but I think it's a little bit partially is that it's the perception, right? So in that way, it is kind of an actual trick. The funny part to me is that 3-4 weeks ago, I'd say the vast majority of Seahawks fans don't know who Will Fries is. I knew him in passing because I started to look at guards. So like, okay, who's out there? Okay, this guy's here and he's played a bit, and he got injured, right? So. And now it's white hot, and it's not just white hot, but if he is signed, it could be celebrated at a level that matters to this organization right now. And so it's funny how quickly that could build, but that's where we're at. And why are we there though? It's recognizing because it's been so bad across the offensive line.
Yeah.
So it's celebrated in a meaningful way if it gets done. And it's again, there's a ton still left to happen, right? So if we wake up and we don't get Fries, if he goes to Minnesota, which is another team that's been, jockeying for him, I just want people to that's not the end of the world. There are other ways to go figure out your guard that are still sitting right there. And if we whiff on all of them, it's still a pretty deep draft. And we could really, really put a lot of chips into making sure we go get multiple plays at it. That's all, man. I wouldn't want people to get too upset if he doesn't come in, but hey, man, celebrate the crap out of if it does. Like, let's go. Wait, what?
So I'm doing a specific search. Taryn says,
is that for us? I'm assuming, does that mean us?
So Taryn says, just saw Will Fries, 3 years, $55 million. Didn't say us or not. And then later on down in the comments, because someone else was asking Fries to Seattle, she says, that's what I saw. And then she followed it up with this. Hang on, let me find it again. Not sure if he's real, but he's a Yahoo Sports guy on Twitter. When I go Twitter, Will Fries latest.
Yeah, I'm doing that myself.
I'm not seeing it.
Nope, I still see him as available. People making beef tallow jokes. I guess that's cool. Delicious. Don't get me wrong, delicious. Yeah, I'm not seeing it yet either. I hope it's correct, obviously.
Yeah. I think I don't think it's surprising that the Will Fries market might be kind of slow playing, because even if it breaks tonight, like after we get off the air, we get snuggled in bed, we're drifting off, we get an Adam Schefter notification bomb, right? Will Fries to Seattle. I guarantee you we'll see this language: contingent on a physical.
Yeah, for
which
sure.
Cannot happen until Wednesday. And so they don't have to be in a hurry, right? I mean, maybe he wants that security, but teams are going to understandably be cautious after an injury like that. Let me ask you this. Let's talk about the draft for a minute, if you don't mind. Right now, who's your crush at 18? Who's your favorite pick when you mock it up?
One and only, if he's there, Tyler Warren, a long shot. I mean, like Tyler Warren, not a long shot. Tyler Warren by a lot is my take. Penn State tight end, for anybody that's not aware, right? I think most are at this point. For me, I look at a dude and you put on that tape and they're like, oh, okay, the comp might be George Kittle or Jeremy Shockey. All right. Shockey was burned a little brighter for a shorter period of time. Kittle is a potential Hall of Famer. And he's definitely the talent of a Hall of Famer. To me, man, like what Kubiak wants to do. We got AJ Barner. Love AJ Barner. I think he's panning out real nicely.
Yeah.
For everything Kubiak wants to do in 12 and 13. And then the extra piece when you go watch his film, man, they hand the ball to him out of shotgun quite a bit, and he's hyper effective. So if they're like, oh, when they asked Kubiak, why are you so good? I think it was Demhauser who asked Kubiak, why are you so good on 3rd and 4th and short? He said, well, I got Taysom Hill. I had Taysom Hill. Like, so you're getting a tight end who I think also gives you that short area. Yeah. Good luck stopping that guy.
They've done wildcat stuff with him, haven't they?
Yes, a lot. Yeah. And he's very hyper effective with it.
Yeah.
So I think you get a Pro Bowl level tight end who's a darn good blocker, who is really good at the backfield, works the middle well. He's got balls, and he works the sidelines well. He's everything I want in a tight end. And then he's got this gadget ability that we know Kubiak is attracted to and spoke openly about in his press conference. Yeah. So when you had Max on the other day, it was confirming some priors, but man, I would trade up I would package and trade up Tyler Warren and be happy about it.
He falls to a certain, because let's be honest, he's going to be very high on the Seahawks board.
Yes.
I know about this kid and just even how he carries himself and everything else, but just his game, like he has the traits of the next great tight end in the league. And he's going to be high on the Seahawks board. And now they have this draft capital. And if they continue to have, because I was just about to say this, if, again, to use this hypothetical, if the Seahawks sign Will Fries tomorrow, the rest of the offseason, they can let it come to them. They can just search for value. They don't have to force anything, right? They have all the leverage in negotiations. Like all the big boxes have been checked. I would argue some fans would still want more offensive linemen. But again, I'd argue there's young guys on the roster. Some of those guys are going to be part of the solution. And there's the draft, and it's a very good interior offensive line class. And so you can just let the draft board come to you in any way too. And you can use those extra picks however you want. And if Tyler Warren slips to like 12,
yeah,
you can go up and get him, and it might just cost you that extra second or maybe the third. I mean, I'd have to look at the trade charts. I could absolutely see that for a player like that. If they stick and pick and Warren's not there, I've had a little bit of a change of heart in the last 8 hours, because up until that point, like my favorite pick at 18 is Kenneth Grant.
Mm-hmm.
I just think the guy's a physical freak. I think the sky's the limit. He's still a raw player, so his best football's ahead of him, but he's still really young too. He was prepared to blow the crap out of the combine, and then he came up with a little hammy in his MRI, and he couldn't compete. He was really bummed. I just think you put him next to Byron Murphy and Leonard Williams and like let him eat. Like that's the makings of an elite defensive line in a year or two. But when I saw the Ernest Jones deal, and it made me think more about the knee, and it made me wonder why the draft capital spent from Tennessee and then from us to get him in the 2 times he's been traded over the last year, why it just seems so low for a guy that's such a good player, and why there was no market for him. Maybe that knee is a thing. There has to be a reason. It wasn't just out of the goodness of his heart that he gave up $15 million, because we saw all these other middle linebackers of the same age range over the last 3 days all sign kind of the standardized middle linebacker contract. 3 years, $50 million with $30 million guaranteed. And he goes 3 for 33 with 15. And so that, to me, brings Jalen Walker and Jahad Campbell back into the picture, especially Campbell, who looks like he could be there at 18, because there are some who think he might be Micah Parsons light, that he's played off-ball linebacker, but that's not really his strong suit. He can do it, but you put him on the edge, and he can really be a terror for you. It's kind of a hybrid. And so it'd be really nice to have somebody on the roster that if Ernest Jones should get hurt, you could keep Tyrese Knight at weak side linebacker, play Jahad Campbell as your Mike, and then you have some depth there. But if all 3 of those guys are healthy, Campbell can be that third guy. He can be on the edge. You can really do some creative things like Mike McDonald likes to do. So those 2 guys typically are how I go. And the reason I go defense there is because I think, as much as it's a good defensive tackle class, the dynamic talent at edge and defensive tackle, I think, falls off quicker in this class than offensive line. And I know I can get a starting caliber guard in the 2nd and 3rd round with those extra picks.
Yeah.
Where I'm not so sure at defensive tackle. Now, I put this on the screen. Kevin Mullen, thanks for the donation. Hot take. Usually when I get trade requests, and tell me how this happens for you on Twitter, they're usually of the ridiculous variety. The fantasy football, completely unrealistic variety, where people are suggesting that we trade for someone's best players that are young, under contract, they're never going to trade. I've never thought of this one. Hot take. Seattle flips their 3rd round pick, one of their 3rd round picks, probably the higher one, to Miami for Tyreek Hill. He was unhappy at the end of last year, said he wanted out. He's walked that back. He's 30 years old now. He's got 3 years left on his deal. There's a massive cap hit in 2026 of $52 million, and then there's void years after that. But his base salary that year is $30 million. You could convert some of that, or you can just walk away that year. Actually, in 2026, you can walk away, save $36 million, and only have a $15 million cap hit. You would get 2 years out of Tyreek Hill at a $32 million cap number, but when you could probably fit this year, and a $27 million cap number next year. A guy that can, you talk about take the top off still. Would you consider this?
I think it's a fun exercise, right? So, and I think, and because he's so dynamic, and he's going to be a Hall of Famer, right? He could stop playing right now, and I think Tyreek Hill walks into Canton. That's how highly I think of him. This is for me such a feel type one. I just cannot, for the life of me, picture Tyreek Hill like in our uniform. It just doesn't. I know that might sound like superficial. I just don't think it would work here. And him playing in
Snyder's a fan of the diva type wide receiver.
I just don't see it. I just don't see it fitting. And for that reason, I'm like, no, I want the capital. I want younger. I still want to go younger. Where like Cooper Kupp, tactician, it's maybe 2 years. You probably get him at a decent value. This to me is like you're blowing the budget back on something that I don't know, man. It could blow up in half a year. So
how about this? If Cincinnati fails to sign both Jamar Chase and T. Higgins to long-term contracts, would you attempt to make a move for whoever is the odd man out?
I mean, if you want to, yes. Especially if you could make a move for Jamar Chase, you make a move for Jamar Chase. He's the best receiver in the game, and Jefferson's right there with him, of course.
I don't think they let him go. I think Higgins would be the guy, but
yeah, I do. But yeah, you put it out there. I'm gonna take the dude. But I do like T. I do think that T can be a one on most teams, on many teams. It is a sensational two. But he's a cool pairing for sure. I like T a lot.
How you doing on time? You okay?
You know what? I do got to run pretty much. I got to go in like 5. Does that sound cool?
Okay, cool. Then let's do this last one. Then I'll let you go.
Nice.
And then I'll kind of take some more questions and wrap some things up.
Nice.
Because this is something I wanted to touch on a little bit earlier. So this gives us an opportunity. Thanks for the donation, Snow Tiger, $4.99. Really appreciate it. I'm worried John Schneider will only sign mediocre offensive line, kind of do what he's always done, right? Sort of look for value and not commit. I think it's a philosophy thing with him. He's ready to overdraft any other position than OL. So I want to say a couple of things about this. First of all, and I'll admit it, like I'm a John Schneider fan, and I will flat out look right in the camera and admit it. It's because I've gotten to know him pretty well over the last couple of years. We have a really good rapport, me and his family and his kids and his wife. I get hugs and I get high fives and stuff when I see him. And so it is hard for me to be completely objective. However, at the end of the day, if this guy ruins my football team, like, I don't care how much I like him, like out, right? Football team comes first. The football team will be here far beyond when John Schneider's career as a general manager. I do take him at his word when he tried to clarify 2 weeks ago his comments from last year about overpaying and overdrafting guards. And he clarified it by saying it's supply and demand. And we're seeing it right now in free agency. Teams are going to overpay for those guys because there just aren't that many of them. And the need is so vast. And a lot of these guys aren't coming out of college ready to play as rookies. We saw it with Christian Haynes. Will Fries is a good example. I mean, but even higher drafted guys, right? And so, but in that same radio show, when he does his weekly spot on Seattle Sports, he said, but I'm probably going to have to overpay this year. And then he went on to really expand that by saying, we all saw it in the Super Bowl. We saw how Philadelphia won. When I watch games, I watch the trenches. We need to build that up. That's our biggest weakness. Everyone knows it. I know it. I don't know how much more emphatically he could have said, we're going to be aggressive in looking at this. And then when I saw him in Mobile, first day, Tuesday, 100% of the time, he was following around the offensive lineman. That's all he watched on that first day. So I think it's there. But I'll make the argument too. It's not just about the players. They brought in an entirely new offensive staff with a ton of experience, proven successful experience.
Yep.
And they're all aligned and they're all on the same page, running this one very successful scheme that's been successful and has won championships in this league for 30 years. He's grown up in that system. It's a system that's more forgiving to offensive linemen. It's a little bit easier to teach them that than it is gap power. They're a little bit less reliant on elite strength and traits and anchor. And they've also brought in a bunch of young offensive linemen in the last couple of years. So I think I can make a pretty strong argument, and I won't here today because, I don't want to use up all the rest of your time, that you only need one. That you could sign Will Fries tomorrow, and yeah, you're going to look to draft a guy if it falls to you a certain way, but it might not be a real significant need. You just check that one box, and I think there are some other pieces in place there. So, even if we wake up tomorrow and we find out that he signed in Minnesota, the sky's not falling. There are other options. Give it time. As I've been telling people ad nauseum the last 2 days that say, we don't have any receivers. Why would Sam Darnold want to come here? Why would any offensive lineman want to come here? They can't play. We don't play tomorrow.
Right.
The season doesn't start tomorrow.
Yeah. The thing I'd end on with that is when I listened to Schneider talk, when he was talking about like, yeah, we might have to overpay. He says that, but then he gives like a fable and he says, yeah, the time he happens to mention the time that they made a big splash on day one. He's like, we didn't think we were going to do that. But then lo and behold, we did it with Draymond Jones, who they just, jettisoned. So he says on one side, hey, I know what I got to do. But then he offers a story about the time they kind of made a goof that they probably would have taken back. Right. Yeah. So I think he's just trying to play it both sides. So it's like, hey, no matter what happens, he could say, well, yes, but we didn't want another Draymond Jones in our hand. He wouldn't say it exactly like that, but he's literally floating that story in that space. I think for that exact reason, Dan, to kind of like give a little bit of cover. However, the clock is ticking on two things: on his short-term career, if it doesn't get fixed, and that if he fixes this and turns it around, he's not just legendary in the Pacific Northwest. He's a legendary GM if he turns this around again after going through Russ, then Gino, and then gets it right here. He could vault into legendary status, like, nationally, or he could be out in a year. Yeah. Right. That's the wire he's on right now. So with that, all that stuff, I've got to believe, even if he just answers the bell with, hey, look, I tried, even if it fails, even if we sign Will Fries and he just isn't quite what he was because of the injury, he could be like, well, guys, I tried. But that might be enough because that might be just enough that we need this year, man. So that's where I'd leave that. Is like, I think he's just gonna do it because he senses he has to. Yeah.
Well, and again, I'll caution people that even if they strike out in free agency and don't sign Kevin Jenkins or Will Fries or one of these big dudes, maybe they sign Lucas Patrick, who was in New Orleans under Kubiak. He's 31 years old. He can play every position. A guy like that, right? The fan base is gonna be in an uproar. But there's still the draft. And maybe when Clint Kubiak said he needs an elite center, we all took that to mean they're going to go get one in free agency. They're going to go after Drew Dahlman. Maybe they mean Gray Zabel. Right. And I said while I was at the Senior Bowl, I was so impressed with the offensive linemen as a whole, especially the interior guys or the tackles that look like they're going to move inside, that I think I made the statement that, if the Seahawks draft any of these dudes that are here in Mobile, be happy about it. Because that's how much quality depth there is in this draft. So even if it doesn't happen in free agency, we'll all be upset. I'll be upset. I'll call them out on it. And then we'll have to sweat it out for 6 weeks, which is no fun. But there still is the draft, right?
100%, man. I'm with you.
So I got to let you go. Thanks a lot for coming on, man. It's always good to talk to you. Love what you guys do over on the Seahawkers pod. Let people know kind of what you're going to be the rest of the week as free agency advances.
Yeah, so we're doing lots of live shows as well and dropping in. So youtube.com/Seahawkers podcast, best way to catch all that. And then one thing I'll say too, which is really cool that's coming up is the draft. Is one of our listeners happens to work at Clearwater Casino.
Oh, yeah, you guys are doing that. Yeah.
Yeah. So we, and I live in Connecticut, right? I mean, I'm a New Yorker who lives in Connecticut. I went to freaking UConn and this is my world now, which is just, I love it. Yeah. And he was like, hey, there's a draft party. Why don't you come out and you could live stream for a couple of days. There's going to be some Seahawks legends here, some current Seahawks. So I was like, guys, if this is happening, I'm in. So booked my ticket. So April 24, 25, we're going to be at the Clearwater Casino. So that'll be a first for me, to come across the country to live stream for that kind of event. And now we just got all these draft picks. So, everything's coming up Millhouse on that end, dude. So very fired up about it.
Before you go, because I just wanted to check, make sure we didn't have like a big story to break right before you left. Bob Condota did just give some clarification within the last hour. For questions about why Will Fries hasn't signed yet, it's worth remembering the tibia injury he suffered last season. Teams may be wanting to bring him in for a physical, which they can't do until Wednesday. Where have you heard that?
I heard it from you about 30 minutes ago, my man.
Where have you heard that? All right, I'm going to let you go, and then I'm going to take care of my viewers here, and we're going to stay on and chat it up a little bit. But thanks again. Check those guys out. They have such a great banter. I love listening to you guys, Adam Emmert and Brandon Schultz there as well, and we have a lot of history too. So when we get closer to the draft, we'll have to get together and maybe do a roundtable. I always love Adam's quarterback takes too, which sounds like he's about a week away from finishing up. So can't wait to get some of his takes.
Hey man, thanks a ton. Yeah, you're the best, man. See you guys all soon, and appreciate the invite.
All right, thanks.
See you,
That's
dude.
Clinton Bonner. Really appreciate it. Dave is one of my most loyal viewers. Really appreciate all the support. The $30 donation. Thank you. That's very generous. I've lost track. Can you remind me the numbers of all the draft picks the Seahawks currently have? As always, I appreciate your analysis, perspective, and optimistic voice of reason approach. Exciting time for Seahawks fans. And that reminds me that I had promised you all a mock draft using all those picks. So you guys want to do that? I will say this. Let me make sure we starred comments to catch up with. I think that's it. Thank you, Dave. Always appreciate your support. So we'll kill two birds with one stone on this one. And hang on one second. So I've got this set up. I wanted to use the Pro Football Focus mock draft simulator. I just like the interface the best. And I think their rankings, as much as, everybody has different opinions about PFF grades and what they mean and how accurate they are. I like to use them just as a reference point and a benchmark. But I also think because of their grading system and how much they put into it, 5 weeks out from the draft, they have the best draft capsules, all the up-to-date information about all the prospects, where some of the other simulators like Mock Draft Database, it's one of my issues with theirs. They don't have prospect profiles that you can look at. Pro Football Network does, but they're so late getting all those profiles up, and their big board just seems to be completely out of whack. Like there's guys available in the 200s that are going to be second-day picks. I think PFF's ranking board, while there are some anomalies, is overall the most accurate. So I like to use it, but they haven't updated the picks yet. Pro Football Network has, so we're going to use that one. All right. So let me do this first. Let's get this banner out of here so that I can share the screen. And there we go. So I've got this set up. Let me do it this way. There. I think that fills the screen up a little bit better so you guys can see it. So I've already got it queued up, right? And we're at pick 18 here. And let me move this over. Thanks for bearing with me here, you guys. Nope. All right. So we're at 18, and here are all the picks. And this is accurate. 18, 50, 52, 82, 92, 137, 173, 187, 12, and 236. Remember, they moved down. They had a couple of 6th-round picks. They moved from the 6th to the 7th as part of that DK Metcalf trade. So here's where we're at so far, and I'm going to run through this pretty quick. Sometimes I really take my time to justify each pick. We're going to just kind of ram through this just to see how it looks. Just to give you an idea of the kind of value you can get having 5 of the top 92 picks in a draft that is known to be lacking blue chip talent at the top, but then very, very even level across a bunch of different position groups from, say, pick 10 to 100. Lots and lots of depth there. So Abdul Carter, Will Campbell, Travis Hunter at the top. They didn't have their quarterbacks going super high. But when you look at the group as a whole that's gone by 18, it's pretty chalky. I think it's pretty accurate. They've got Shedeur Sanders falling to 18. I don't think Sanders is a Schneider guy. I'm not going to take a quarterback at 18. So I'm going to look at the usual suspects. And while I typically take Kenneth Grant, I'm going to go a different way here based on what we were just talking about 15 minutes ago. But I do want to mention this. A lot of you are enamored with Nick Emenwari from South Carolina. I'm not. He is a high-level athlete. Height, weight, speed, all of that. People want to compare him to Cam Chancellor. People want to compare him to Kyle Hamilton. It's hard to find reps on tape of him thumping guys. He's not like a heat-seeking missile. He's not anything like Cam Chancellor. I'm not so sure about his coverage ability. I think the Kyle Hamilton comps are a little rich, and I just don't like the value of taking a box safety at 18 because you already have your 2 good deep safeties. And you have some young guys you like too. I think we're going to see the best of Jarek Reed this year. We're going to see if he can get into the rotation. So I'm not a big fan there. I'm going to go Jihad Campbell for the reasons that I mentioned earlier. He is a high-level athlete, 6'2", 235. He plays off-ball linebacker, but he also plays edge. And there are some who think if he were to transition to edge full-time, he would be an unstoppable force in getting to the quarterback. He's also a leader, as so many of those Nick Saban recruits are at Alabama. And he also protects you against Ernest Jones potentially having some issues with that knee. I have to believe that may have been a factor in the team-friendly deal that he signed today. So I'm going to go Jihad Campbell just because I think he's a unique athlete. And what does Mike McDonald like? He likes versatile weapons, chess pieces on defense that he can move all around and keep offenses guessing. I really like the value there. Now we get to the second round, and I'm going to be optimistic. The Seahawks are going to sign either Will Fries or Tevin Jenkins in free agency. So they could just go best player available. Now, here you might take a peek at quarterback at 50. They have Jackson Dart still available. There's no way he lasts until 50. I think he's a first-round pick. You get into some of these other offensive linemen. Not a big Josh Connerly fan. Wyatt Milam, I like inside as a guard. They have him listed as a guard here. I don't think he's a tackle. But I think you've signed Will Fries. You've got Christian Haynes. You have Satawa Lamea. Jalen Sundell can play some guard. I'm taking linemen in this draft, but there's some guys that I really like later that I think can get better value. So I'm taking a peek here at receiver because I think after the 50s, it falls off a little bit. And there's a dude right here that I have that I see on the screen already that I absolutely love. There's two, both the Iowa State guys, Jaden Higgins, Jalen Noel. Very, very different players. Noel is a smaller guy, not just a slot guy. He can play outside too. 5'10", 194, really put together. Had one of the most dynamic athletic combines, jumped out of the gym, ran 4.39, was the best receiver probably day in, day out in Mobile, but his teammate was right there with him. And Jaden Higgins is a guy that I think is more complementary to what JSN does and helps fill the void of DK Metcalf more. 6'4", 214. His relative athletic score is 9.85. He had a great combine, very productive, 87 catches, 1,200 yards last year. Excellent hands, very, very good route runner, very smooth in and out of his breaks, something DK Metcalf didn't give you. I think he's a guy that could play outside for you, and I think he's a great complement to JSN, and that's a great way to replace what you had in DK Metcalf. All right, so we've got Jihad Campbell, Jaden Higgins. I want to take a peek at defensive line because, as I said when Clinton was on, that falls off pretty quick. Not a Deon Walker fan. There's a couple dudes I really like there, but can I get them later? Probably not. Now I'm going to look at the offensive linemen, and I want to show you the depth I'm talking about. Milam at 49. They've got Luke Kandra at 154. He's like a poster child for outside zone. Miles Frazier from LSU, not sure about the athleticism. Jackson Slater, one of the better center guard combination players in the draft. Very, very strong. He's a local kid. Played at Newport High School in Bellevue, starred at Sacramento State. He was one of the best center guard combos down at the Senior Bowl. Seahawks met with him twice at the Senior Bowl. Interviewed him at the Combine as well. Clay Webb is another guy that I really like, and he's available at 181. So the depth is there. So on defense, I am going, where is he? I'm going Alfred Collins. I want a big, space-eating, gap-eating, block-destroying dude in the middle. Alfred Collins is every bit that from Texas. Reunite him with Byron Murphy, 6'5", 332. Really, really physical. He's not quite... what was Tavondre Sweat, the dude that came out of Texas last year, right? Tavondre Sweat was 345, 350, but Collins is big, long, kind of think, remember a couple of years ago when Pete Carroll said, we want to emulate what the 49ers are doing. And that's when they had, they had all those guys. Now I'm blanking on their names, but they had all those guys, DeForest Buckner. That's who I'm thinking of. Long, and he talked about how long they were. I think Alfred Collins would be a beast in the middle. You add a young nose tackle that really frees Byron Murphy and Leonard Williams to be able to move around. I think he's great value at 52. Now we get to 82. We're going to have 82 and 92 in the third round. I'm rejecting all these trades. Let's just see how it looks with the picks we have. Let's see what they have in quarterback. And this is exactly what Clinton and I were talking about. This is kind of the way I see it falling. This clump. Quinn Ewers, Will Howard, Kyle McCord, Tyler Shuck they have in this group. I think Shuck is gone by this point. I really do. I think one of these quarterback needy teams, maybe a Tennessee, if they decide to go Carter or Hunter at 1, pass on quarterback. I could see them taking Shuck in the second round because he can play right away. He's a little bit older. I'm going Quinn Ewers here for the reasons that Clinton and I talked about. The connections with Schneider. He's known about him. He's talked about him for 2 years. JSN has a familiarity with him. Byron Murphy played with him at Texas. He's being trained by Mike McCarthy, who's one of John Schneider's closest colleagues and friends in the business, who he's worked with for 30 years. He's 21 years old. He turns 22 in a few days. That lines up nicely with Sam Darnold. You develop him for a couple years behind Darnold. If Darnold establishes himself in 2 years as a no doubt, he's your franchise quarterback, okay. You sign him to a long-term deal. You trade Quinn Ewers and you get value for him. But if he looks like he can be a franchise quarterback, maybe you trade Sam Darnold. That contract would certainly be tradable. You move on from him, whatever. I think Quinn Ewers makes a lot of sense at 82. So we've got a linebacker / edge. I want to pick up another edge at some point later in this draft. We've got a wide receiver that I'm really excited about that can play outside. We've got a nose tackle, and we've got a quarterback. We've kind of checked a lot of boxes. So let's just look at the all tab and kind of see who falls to us. And there you go. Like, I'm not so sure he's going to be here at 91, but it is such a deep tight end class. It all kind of depends on team needs. And the Seahawks certainly need one. We don't know what's going to happen with Noah Fant yet. They haven't touched his deal yet. Last year of his deal, he has a $13.4 million cap hit. I don't think he's going to play on that number. Clint Kubiak says he likes him. Mike McDonald says he's a complete tight end. Still not 30 years old yet. I think he fits really well with A.J. Barner, and they're very complementary and would work well with those 12 and 13 personnel sets that Kubiak likes to use. But Mason Taylor is such a dynamic receiver, such a fluid athlete, tall, long. And although it looks like he's not here any longer, let me just see. Yeah, Elijah Arroyo went earlier. Arroyo's more of just a receiver-only type tight end. Taylor has more upside as a two-way guy. I think he's tremendous value here. If he wasn't on the board, they've got Terrence Ferguson ranked 100th. I think that's low. I think he's the next best. He's probably tight end 5 in this class for me, behind Warren, Loveland, Arroyo, and Taylor. But it's close. If Taylor wasn't on the board, I would take Ferguson right here at 92, but I'm taking Taylor instead. We're just checking boxes, man. As we get to the next spot, we have to take an offensive lineman at this point, right? So let's see who's left. And this, man, I know the fan base would be freaking out if we get to this point. But here we go. There's Luke Kandra. Now, he's had some injury issues, but 6'4", 319, he's an elite pass protector and a great mover to the second level. He really is kind of the ideal zone blocking guy. But I'm taking Jackson Slater here. I might take Clay Webb. Now, Clay Webb was a 5-star recruit, the #1 center in the country coming out of high school, went to Georgia, transferred to Jacksonville State after his freshman year, was an All-American at the FCS level, looked every bit the part of SEC, like former Georgia lineman at the Senior Bowl, can play center and guard, really athletic. I just like Slater. The Seahawks like him. They've talked to him. Some scouts think he can be, right there with Gray Zabel, and Jared Wilson is one of the better centers in this draft, but he can also play guard. He squats like 650, really strong, had a great combine, great tester, awesome dude. Bring him home. He's a hometown kid. He can play all 3 positions. That is tremendous value. At 173, I'm going to take a pick at the offensive tackles, and there's a guy right there. Michael Thompson talked about him on the show a couple days ago. Jack Nelson out of Wisconsin. More athletic than some of the traditional Wisconsin big tackles are, and a guy that can play left and right tackle. So you add him to what they have in Josh Jones on a 1-year deal. I think Jack Nelson could be a guy that could succeed Abe Lucas on the right side. But if Charles Cross were to get hurt, could play left tackle in a pinch as well. So we've got 3 picks left. Haven't addressed the secondary or a true edge player. So let's take a peek there. See what we have at edge. Barron Sorrell out of Texas, I like. His teammates voted him as the best edge in Mobile. Edge has been picked clean a little bit, but I'm okay with that because I got Campbell. And he's a guy that I really like. RJ Oben's another guy out of Notre Dame that has all the physical traits in the world, just hasn't had the production to back it up. But a guy that might have a lot of untapped potential. Let's take a look at corners. There's a guy that I like. I want to take a peek at safety. There's a guy I like. So Jalen Smith's ranked higher. USC, 5'10", 187. Not the most athletic guy, right? Probably a slot corner. But this guy was so impressive with his man coverage skills in Mobile, particularly when they did red zone stuff on Wednesday when they were in full pads. He was nearly impossible to beat. Defended a bunch of passes, knocked a bunch of balls away. Great ball skills, really great awareness, gets his head around, makes a play on the ball. He's built, he's well put together, so he can handle that slot position. I've said this and I'll say it again. I don't love the idea long-term of Devin Witherspoon playing the slot, having to take on guards every day. I just don't. I want him at some point to transition to be more of an outside guy. So a guy like Jalen Smith, he can play outside in a pinch. He might be like a Kobe Bryant type because he doesn't have that elite speed where maybe he could transition to safety at some point, but I think he's a guy that could play nickel for you early in his career and might be able to give you the flexibility so that Devin Witherspoon can play on the outside. And then I'm going to peek at safety again here, and here's the guy that I liked. I was hoping he'd still be on the board. Maxon Hook out of Toledo, 6', 202. Good two-way safety. He can deep cover. Liked his movement skills in Mobile. He can hit. He's well built. I think he's a guy that can be a special teams demon for you as well. And then we have one last pick to finish it out. And I'm going to take a look at this running back class. It's so good. It's so deep. You got to get one, right? Ken Walker's in the last year of his deal. They're probably going to carry 4 running backs where they've only carried 3 on the roster the last few years because Clint Kubiak likes to use 2-back sets. Is George Halani that 4th guy? I think, you heard John Schneider, you saw him get a big smile on his face when he talked about this running back class when he sat down with Chris Sims and Mike Floyd this week. There's some guys here that don't belong here. Trevor Etienne's not going to be available in the 7th round. LaQuindon Jackson out of Arkansas might, and Donovan Edwards out of Michigan might. Edwards is a guy that 3 years ago looked like a budding star at Michigan, and then it seems like he just kind of lost some juice the last couple of years. But the thing that's appealing about Donovan Edwards is still got that home run ability, put together well, 5'11", 205, RAS score of 9.68, had a really, really nice combine. And when I was down in Mobile, Jim Nagy, who was then the director of the Senior Bowl, said Donovan Edwards is a guy that teams think could actually be a slot receiver. He's that good in the passing game. So he's under consideration. But I also like LaQuindon Jackson, and here's why. 6'1", 229, elite size for the position. Not a big productive rusher in college, never topped more than 850 yards on the ground, not a breakaway rusher, but he's a thumper. And I just wonder if maybe he's different than the other guys on the roster right now. Could be a guy that could develop into a fullback, which is something Clint Kubiak likes. So I'm going to go with the bigger back here as just kind of a lottery ticket in the 7th round. So here's our draft class. And I don't have StreamYard on the screen right now, so I have no idea what y'all are saying about this. I just wanted to ram through it and not get distracted. Jahad Campbell in the 1st round. Jaden Higgins, receiver, in the 2nd round. Alfred Collins, nose tackle, 2nd round. Quinn Ewers at 82. Mason Taylor, tight end at 92. Jackson Slater, guard, center at 137. Jack Nelson, tackle at 173. Jalen Smith, corner at 187. Maxon Hook, safety at 212. And LaQuindon Jackson, big running back, maybe fullback at 236. All right, let me have it, you guys. Yay or nay? Let me hop on over here. Get rid of this. Nope. Let me take that other. Things are moving a little bit slow. Hopefully the Wi-Fi and the hopefully I'm not buffering on your end. Let's should I cringe? Okay. Let's see. Let's check the starred comments first. All right. Let's backtrack a little bit. Take care of some of these donations. Cold Stock, thank you so much for the $5 donation. My prediction for the season is Sam will be elite to start the season before falling off a cliff. Fries will be very good, not great. 7 to 10 wins. What do you base that on, Cold Stock? Why do you think that'll happen? Because my argument would be that it might look kind of different. That it might be a little rough to start the season because we're going to be putting a new offensive line together for the first time. And it takes a while for offensive lines to get continuity and get dialed in together. And so I would make the argument that maybe it starts off a little herky jerky, kind of hit and miss. And the defense keeps them in games. And then as the season goes on, it gets better. That zone running scheme, they start to dial that in. They start to figure out who belongs where and what roles guys should play in, right? That's kind of how I feel about it. Calvin Sinlinger, thanks for the $1.99 donation. Do you think we sign a receiver or draft one? Both. Clinton and I were talking about it, and we're both on the same page in this. I want to sign a value wide receiver, right? A guy on a prove-it deal, or a guy that plays a specific role. Marquez Valdez-Scantling makes a lot of sense because of what he did late in the season for New Orleans last year. And he's a taller guy, still has the speed to take the top off. And he can kind of make up for that red zone presence that DK was. And he'd be cheap. Or a guy like Elijah Moore, who was a former high pick. Bad quarterback situation with the Jets, bad quarterback situation with the Browns, but still an explosive athlete, a ton of potential. And a guy that might not cost that much, and maybe you buy low on him and he can end up living up to that draft status. But then you absolutely also you hunt upside and you take a guy in this draft that you think can be a major consideration. Robert, I know you jumped in early because you said get O-line, but I wanted to show you. I really like the way this draft fell because I wanted to make the point. First of all, remember what I said. I said, this is under the assumption we're going to sign Will Fries. I keep wanting to say Freeze because of John Freeze. I did this draft assuming that we sign a really good guard. Will Fries, Tevin Jenkins, maybe Mekhi Becton. I don't think he fits the system, but, a guy like that. Maybe even a Kevin Zeitler, as Clinton said, or a Brandon Scherf as a one-year veteran presence because we have such a damn young offense and offensive line. It's so young. You got to get a veteran in there. And so you go into the draft, you let it fall to you, and there's so much depth in the offensive line this year, you don't have to panic. You don't have to reach. I will make the argument here today that if you sign, again, let's say it's Will Fries, Charles Cross, Will Fries, Oluwatimi / Sundell competing at center, Christian Haynes is your starting right guard, and a healthy Abe Lucas at right tackle. You've now got a swing tackle in Josh Jones. Sitao Lamea is there to compete. And then Jackson Slater, I think highly enough of him that he's going to compete to start at center or right guard, mostly at center, I think. Jack Nelson is going to be a guy that's going to try to push to beat out Josh Jones as your swing tackle, but a guy really that's positioning himself to potentially take over for Abe Lucas in 2026. So I did address offensive line there, and you still have all those other young guys. Now, I don't think Anthony Bradford fits the zone scheme, but I think maybe, again, with the dearth of offensive linemen and guards in this league, a gap power team might see something in Anthony Bradford. Maybe you get a late pick for him, right? So maybe even, maybe Michael Jarrell doesn't fit. If he can't play left tackle and he's right tackle only, unless you think he can be that guy and be your starter long-term, maybe he's a guy that doesn't make the final roster either. So did want to show and really illustrate some of the depth there on the offensive line. Let's see. Get Rashid Shaheed for a fourth. He's coming off a broken leg or a knee injury. Gotta look into that. I would argue that in the fourth round, you can get a Rashid Shaheed type, a Tez Johnson, an Isaac Tesla. I think Restrepo's probably gone by the fourth round. Jalen Knoll certainly is. Jalen Lane might still be there in the fourth round. There's some really cool slot guys in this draft. I'd rather spend a draft pick and get a cheap rookie deal. John McGrath says Ewers could develop into a really good QB. Would rather have Milrow for that role. Now, touched on this earlier, maybe you didn't hear it. As much as I've been down on Milrow after what I saw at the Senior Bowl, I think we saw him take a step forward at the combine. He's clearly been working on the intermediate passing game stuff, which is purely a mechanical issue. The athletic traits are off the board. The deep passing skills are elite. The leadership, the character skills, elite. Now that you have Sam Darnold, my view of Jalen Milrow has changed because you can afford to take a shot on him and tuck him away. He'd be your third quarterback on the roster this year. Sam Howell's not going anywhere. He wouldn't have to face any pressure to play. You develop him, you work on his technique. Andrew Ginocco takes him to the lab, and Jake Peets works with him, and you work on the footwork. You work on marrying his lower half to his upper body, which is an issue right now. You work on his eyes. And if he hits, the timeline matches. He's young enough. Maybe at the end of Darnold's deal, you really have something. If not, all you spent was probably a 3rd-round pick to get him. Or maybe you talk about a position switch or use him in packages, that kind of thing. I do think signing Sam Darnold brings Milroe back into the picture for me. I really do. Glenn Moreno, $9.99 super thanks. Thank you so much for the donation. Really, really appreciate it. Could the Seahawks still trade for defensive end Trey Hendrickson, John McGrath? Absolutely. So we kind of touched on it a little bit. We didn't get into it that deep with Clinton earlier, but I was starting to make the point, and I think we got off on a little bit of a tangent, that the Jones deal being so team friendly, you can afford to sign Will Fries to a big contract, and you've already locked up all your unrestricted free agents that you need to. There isn't another restricted or unrestricted free agent that the Seahawks have to sign. I'd like to see him bring Cody White back, give him a shot as a guy that kind of flashed late last year and definitely a deep threat. But that's a $1 minimum, or a dollar minimum. It's $1 million minimum tender. They don't have to do that today. They can bring him back later. There's nobody else. They got Josh Jobe taken care of, Jaron Reed, Ernest Jones. This was a very unusual year. Usually there's 5, 6, 7 guys that you want to try to bring back. They're done there. All 11 starters are back on defense. 15 players that started games for them last year back on defense. The heavy lifting is done on offense. You've got your quarterback. You get that offensive lineman, and you're still going to have a ton of cap space left, and you haven't even adjusted Uchenna Nwosu's deal yet, and you haven't done anything with Noah Fant's $13.4 million cap hit. You can absolutely use one of those extra picks, trade it to Cincinnati for Trey Hendrickson in the last year of his deal. Let's see what his cap hit is. I've been meaning to look this up. Give me a second. Things are moving a little bit slow on this end. Okay. Not getting a lot of cooperation here. Okay. Trey Hendrickson, let's take a look. Because we have a bunch of young edge players that we like, right? None of them are elite. And I'm not so sure that Boye Mafe deserves a big second contract. Gregory Rousseau in Buffalo just signed a 4-year, $80 million deal today or yesterday. Mafe's been a more productive player. Do you think Boye Mafe is a $20 million player? He flashes and he impacts the game sometimes. Is he a game in, game out, game wrecker? Is he a guy that offensive coordinators have to game plan for? I don't know. Love him, love his story, love where he came from and everything else. He's a great teammate. I don't know that he's ever going to ascend to being a player that's worth that kind of money. Trey Hendrickson, 31 years old, coming off a season in which he had one of his best seasons, back-to-back 17.5 sack seasons. Unreal. Entering into the last year of his contract, and his cap hit is only $18.6 million. We know for a fact now, it's been widely reported, the Seahawks tried to get Max Crosby for Geno and DK. The Raiders turned him down, obviously signed him to the huge extension a couple days later. You don't think they'd like Trey Hendrickson on this team if they were willing to go for Max Crosby? And if all it would cost you is a second rounder, one of your extra second rounders? That's a great suggestion, John. I would do that 100 times out of 100. In fact, I would do it. And if he's a guy that, liked it here and clicked with McDonald, tack on a couple more years, guys at his position that play the way he plays can play into their mid-30s. We've seen Khalil Mack do it. There are other examples. I would absolutely make that move and try and extend him for a couple of years and keep him around. In fact, I would do that in lieu of giving Mafe that extension. You could try to sign him, see what happens. You could tag him and trade him. You just let him walk, and maybe there's a comp pick. I would absolutely make that move. That's a really great suggestion, John. I appreciate that. All right, let me do this because we're pushing 2 hours here. We're 55 seconds away from 2 hours. 1,600 of you in here watching. Really appreciate y'all being here. This has been a lot of fun following all this and being able to do it full time for y'all. Really enjoying that. I just want to check Twitter one more time. Let's see if there's any late breaking information either with the Seahawks or elsewhere. Here's Corbin Smith, a little more added context on Josh Jones. He was a player I had solid grades on coming out of Houston. He hasn't become the full-time starter I thought he could, but he played decent football for Arizona in 2022, and he's still just 27. Feels like a good depth add-on, but the price tag better be incentive-based. So we still don't know how much that's for. It's a one-year deal. I like it, though. Yeah. Nothing on Will Fries. Let me just do a targeted search here real quick. Make sure we're not missing anything. No, but then you see stuff like this. Signing Josh Jones when Will Fries is still available. The two things are not related. Nothing more with Will Fries. Again, I think, I've been saying it all day, but Bob Condotta also mentioned it. That tibia fracture, there's no timeline. We've been given no indication from his camp that, hey, he's going to be ready for training camp. He's going to be ready to go by week 1 or whatever. So teams are going to want to do physicals. So they might be negotiating, but anything, even if they were to reach an agreement, again, we wake up tomorrow morning and Will Fries to Seattle, 3 years, $55 million, contingent on passing a physical, which can't happen till Wednesday. So keep that in mind. Some other guys, let's just check in on Ken Rosenthal's top 101, which they've done a great job of updating. The top 10 available free agents on his list were all signed. Sam Darnold was number 4 overall on his list. Will Fries, he has it 17. One of the most improved young guards in football. Broke his tibia in week 5. Likely to get paid plenty despite the injury. Tevin Jenkins, Bears, a guy that a second rounder, I think. Beginning of his career started rough. He had some injury issues, and then kind of like Fries, really developed and looks like an outstanding zone blocker. Really great footwork. Knows how to position his body, get to the second level, and wall guys off. Just 27 years old. He's ranked 28th. Josh Myers, again, Green Bay, coming off his rookie contract, 27 years old, center from Ohio State. He's the starter there, but they're not really pushing to re-sign him. And I actually asked Corbin about him today, and he said, don't think he's a good zone, outside zone fit, stiff as an athlete. Kevin Zeitler, 35-year-old veteran, ranked 37th. Hasn't been signed yet. Mekhi Becton's at 51, 26 years old. He's still there. But then, they're going to add, I believe, at least one significant piece, like a contributing player on defense, a good player. Maybe like John suggested, they make a trade for a Trey Hendrickson. That would make a ton of sense to me. But I could see them being in on the Jonathan Allen discussion too. Now, it was reported today that Allen was flying to Minnesota for a visit. That deal isn't done yet. Maybe Allen's going to take more visits. He can visit with teams before Wednesday because he was released by the Redskins. So he's not bound to the start of the league year as a guy coming off an expiring contract. We know the Seahawks talked to Washington about trading for Jonathan Allen in 2023 before the trade deadline. They were rebuffed, so they turned to Leonard Williams and ended up getting him. Can the two play together? Would they still be interested? We know they tried to sign Zach Allen and Draymond Jones in the same offseason 2 years ago. So maybe they would look to pair another premium defensive lineman with Leo Williams and Byron Murphy. They're going to add somebody on defense. Maybe it'll be value later on. Mike McDonald did such a great job with Jadeveon Clowney, Kyle Van Noy, kind of resurrecting those guys' careers. And so maybe it's kind of someone that slips through the cracks. But don't ignore defense, right? It's not all about the offensive line. That being said, guys, I think that's going to do it. I think 2 hours is my max. And because I was up so dang early in the morning, only got 90 minutes of sleep and was up at 1:30, I'm going to crash. If you haven't seen my interview from early this morning with Rob Staten, it still has aged well. It would still apply to everything that's in front of the Seahawks now. In particular, he talks pretty extensively about how he feels about Will Fries and why I think he thinks he's a perfect fit. So do that. We talk a little bit of draft as well. And then I'll be back tomorrow. I'll react to any big news or big signings that happen during the day. Similar to today, though, I won't be in my studio, so those might have to come from on location, kind of a short hit like I did today when the Darnold news dropped. And then tomorrow night I'll go live again and we'll do this and take your questions and comments, kind of break down where everything stands tomorrow as we head in to the rest of the week. Jackson Bevins is going to join me on Friday. Can't wait to get his take. He was not happy about the moves that happened over the weekend, about Geno, about the team moving on from Geno Smith and DK Metcalf. So it'll be interesting. Can't wait to talk to Jackson. Always love his insight, but to see kind of where he's at now, take his temperature, see how he's doing, and what he thinks of what the Seahawks have done so far. And then we'll go from there. Follow me on Twitter and Blue Sky at Seahawks Forever, as always. And be sure to subscribe to the channel. All the other ways you can support the channel are down below. Thanks to all of you with the super chat, the super thanks, the memberships. I will, once we get past sort of the first, second wave of free agency, when things settle down a little bit, you'll start to see some membership-only streams and exclusive content that will be available only to members for a day or two before it's available to the rest of them. So good way to support the channel as well. But the best way is just thumbs up, subscribe, hit that bell, and engage with the videos. Until tomorrow, in some capacity, some way, shape, or form, either tomorrow night or during the day if there's breaking news. Forever and always, go Hawks. Thanks a lot, you guys.